comes, ladies and gentlemen, giving away. Come on, let's hear your voices. Show your appreciation for it, stopping in here today at Tankfest 2017.
One of the lessons Britain learned in the Second World War never wanted to be outdone. Hence that massive, great 120mm gun. And we also said we wanted thick armour. And Chieftain, when he came into service, had by far the best armour protection of any tank in the world at the time. The story with Chieftain, sadly, was that the engine wasn't really up to it. So this was the old famous L60 Leyland engine in the back. That's what caused an awful lot of trouble with Chieftain in its service life. And it was only later on in this was our protection up to it. So that usual cat and mouse game of keeping your firepower, your protection up in line with what we thought we might be fighting against. Now, when the contrast is Chieftain, a similar generation tank we're looking at here, coming on with its turret reversed in the travel lock, is the American M60 tank. And again, another one of these venerable Cold War warriors that's still going on in quite a number of countries around the world. You may have seen M60s like this on the news fairly recently. The Turkish army still using them in action on the Syrian border. But it dates back to this program about 1956 it was. They decided they wanted to upgrade the M48 tanks that were then in service. And really what you've got here is it's almost like an M48 but supersized. They added the famous British L7 105mm gun, made everything an awful lot bigger, and this could then take up to about 63 rounds in it with stops that you need to do, such as things along the line of maintenance. But tremendously successful vehicle in the sense it saw service all around the world in many other armies. Bit of a misnomer in the West, we often saw it being ill-used, certainly Middle East. So this, coming on now, this is our Challenger 1. We've actually got two running Challenger 1s now. The workshop guys, this one was gifted to us some time ago with a lot of help from people in the background. We managed to get this one going. We normally drive around a sandy coloured one that was actually Arthur Denara tank, and they wanted actually to buy the Centurion tank off of Britain. But at that time the Korean War was going on, so even though ultimately Switzerland did buy Centurions, they had started their own tank design program, because again, even though they're a neutral country, a bit like Sweden as well, they are nervous about people on their borders coming their way. So they have actually quite a big defence industry, and not so much a standing army, a citizens army. So people they call on, if anything went wrong, all of a sudden off you go, and you're called up and you're basically like the Home Guard, but then you become very quickly a professional military force. So Switzerland, because it couldn't buy Centurions at the time, started a program that developed into this. This is something called the PZ, or Panzer 61. And what you've really got there is a Mercedes bus engine in the back. They brought that in from Germany, but everything else they built within Switzerland. And then they went and of course got a 90mm gun, first of all on the first vehicles, and then got our famous L7 105mm gun again. Came out. More of those tanks were being lost to the enemy because they couldn't be recovered from the battlefield when they broke down than we were knocking out in combat. So what ended up happening, they were trying to use FAMOs to recover big German tanks, and they're basically like an unarmoured half-track. If it's in on a battlefield that's or a contested ground, you're in trouble. And it was only when the Berg Panther came into operation did they have a chance of recovering a major heavy tank under fire. Now, we converted tanks in Britain. We ended up taking turrets off the tanks in World War II to do recovery tanks, and it was only after the Second World War that we ended up designing this tank. This is the Centurion ARV, Armoured Recovery Vehicle. Now, this particular one, based on a Mark II tank, what they started with the Mark I recovery vehicles, they basically got gun tanks that had come to the end of their lives, took the turrets off, and built that peculiar tank in the middle there, our Sherman, that was coming out being called the M4 Sherman tank. So they were getting confused. You think all you spotters get confused. So the M3 light tank, they didn't want to call an M4 tank because that was going to be the Sherman. So they whip on to the next version of the Stewart tank, as we called it. They call it the M5, and that's the one that's behind our Sherman there with the deep wading apparatus. Lots of improvements on it. Thicker armour. The raised engine deck at the back there you can see behind the turret. A piece on the side of the turret, look like sort of cheek pieces again. Those bits on the side, they were put on to protect the anti-aircraft machine gun mount. And they put the driver's hatch on the top of the front glacé plate instead of the earlier M3. As you see it driving past, his position, he flops down his vision port, his hatch, so he looks straight ahead. Tanks, we see them from the outside. All of that is about the gun, and all that gun is trying to get that round accurately on target to do the damage. That's what it's all about, of course. So, and that was a lesson that certainly in Britain, as I mentioned, we learned after World War II. Stop faffing around with the edges, back to the basics. It's the power of the gun. They seem to get it right when they made the Stook. What they do is they take the turret. They realise building a turreted tank is very expensive and lots more engineering. It's got to turn, got to go 360 degrees, lots more gearing and equipment has to be built to make a turreted tank. So they take the turrets off, they use the Panzer III hull, they build a casement over the top and put a gun in the front that just fires forward. Has a few degrees either left and right, up and down. Sturmgeschützes they could make more simply, cheaper and in larger numbers. And in the Normandy campaign, there's an estimate that Sturmgeschützes knock out more Allied tanks than any other type of German armour. And of course, the other thing we should remember is actual anti-tank guns knock out more Allied armour than any tank ever does. So freestanding or towed anti-tank guns, again, are much more powerful. So
now, if you focus your attention on the arena, or for our purposes, occupied France, you can see French resistance fighters moving stealthily towards their planned objectives. In this case, a fuel dump. But before they can knock out this valuable supply base, they first have to eliminate the guards. Utilizing coded messages, hundreds of small groups of resistant fighters were activated to play a crucial role in interdicting supply and communication lines many miles away from the actual combat areas, consequently slowing down and delaying the German military's ability to quickly respond to the invasion.
No, you can't like that video like that. That's so good. Oh.
France, June 1944, D-Day. As dawn breaks, the horizon fills with the largest armada the world has ever seen. 150,000 men are about to be unleashed onto the beaches and fields of Normandy. Stretching over 80 kilometers from the Orne River in the north through to the Cherbourg Peninsula, the Normandy coastline is heavily defended by fortifications, anti-tank Dragon's Teeth, wire, minefields, and defending German troops. If you look to the center of the arena, you will see German forces from the 352nd Infantry Division setting up in a defensive position on the ridge commanding views and lines of fire over Omaha Beach, the one featured in the film Saving Private Ryan. Omaha Beach, or La Plage d'Or, the Golden Beach to the French, is 7.5 kilometers long and overlooked by cliffs on either side. For the Allies, its importance cannot be underestimated. Failure to take Omaha would leave the British beachheads and the American beachhead at Utah separated and unable to assist each other, putting the invasion in great peril. The United States 1st and the 29th Infantry Divisions are given the task of assaulting the beach, supported by a massive sustained naval bombardment at 05:45 hours. Omaha has to be taken regardless of the casualties.
Oh, my hand's going off. Not me.
Rexy. Rexy. Ice cream. Ice cream.
Now, if you look to the east of the arena, US infantry from the 29th Infantry Division can be seen moving forwards to attack the German defences on the right-hand side of the beach with their weapons. Secure in their fortified positions, the German defenders' heavy machine guns, mortars, small arms subject the Americans to sustained fire, which checks their forward momentum. Without armour support, following the failure to land enough of their DD and deep-wading Shermans onto the beach, the American GIs are suffering.
Did she just say what she said? Huh?
I should be landing here from machine guns.
However, despite heavy casualties to the assault troops, which spurred Colonel Canham's famous line, "They're murdering us here. Let's move inland and get murdered," the Americans are able to gain a foothold and land enough armour, in this case US armour, to assist in suppressing the defenders by sustained heavy fire, allowing the US infantry to finally rally and engage the German defenders on the bluffs, whose morale finally breaks, forcing them to rout or surrender. Omaha had been a tough, brutal and bloody assault for the American GIs, and a difficult baptism of fire for the Sherman crews of the 741st, who only managed to land 16 Shermans on shore, a further 27 lying on the seabed. Yet their job was only beginning, and whilst they'd taken the beachhead, it was now vitally important to help secure and enlarge it. Following another naval bombardment, this time by the Royal Navy, the action moves north along the Normandy coast to Sword Beach at the mouth of the River Orne and the small port of Ouistreham. Here, the British 3rd Infantry Division was given the task of assaulting and quickly silencing German defences on Sword Beach if the crucial objective transport hunt of Caen was to be captured. However, the Germans were aware of this and had moved the 21st Panzer Division, equipped with Panzer Mk1s nearby, to attempt to drive the British back into the sea.
There's going to be a billion Germans left. Because there's quite a few Americans in that hill with a big machine gun. And that tank has literally done nothing. Go with the pistol. Oh, what? Something's happening in that bush. Oh, right. Yep, they are shooting a metal car. Not really running for your lives, are you? That right out in the open. A gentle jog. And they are literally dead. Yeah, the Germans are terrible shots. They're stormtroopers.
The thing is, in this summer, has got the dope.
Yeah.
Armoured support for the initial assault wave was supplied by the 27th Independent Armoured Brigade, the 79th Armoured Division, the famous Hobart's Funnies, and consisted of 3 DD duplex drive Sherman regiments, the 13th, 18th Royal Hussars, the 1st East Riding Yeomanry, and the Staffordshire Yeomanry. The 13th, 18th Royal Hussars with infantry in close support, assaulting the German beach positions at Lyon-sur-Mer. Here we can see British armour, in this case a Stewart-like tank from a wrecker unit, move inland and use its firepower to suppress the German positions, forcing them to withdraw. By the end of this day of days, Allied forces had suffered approximately 10,000 casualties.
Wow, someone just did a sick commando roll. Yeah, the British also love their shit shooter. Yeah, they just fired it into space. Or if someone's come up with a plausible reason. Oh man, he's got one of those super duper rocket things. Yeah, if you shot that, that would ruin the tank. No, it didn't blow. Yeah, it just sat there. I will finally with some German armour. That's not a Panzer IV. Yeah.
Now, not only do the Allies have to contend with the dogged German defenders on the beaches, but also the terrain in this inland. In this case, what the French call the bocage. These were large, thick hedgerows sprouting out of near impenetrable bases of earth, stone and thorn bushes, which themselves were 4 to 6 feet high and virtually insurmountable by armour, with the added danger of exposing the weak belly plate armour to the Germans if the unlucky vehicle was able to crawl over the hedge. Unfortunately for the Allies, the bocage was very extensive in Normandy, being used to separate and protect the fields from the wind, and together with the numerous apple orchards and sunken roads, the terrain beyond the beaches was adept at slowing down attacks and channeling the armour into anti-tank ambushes, which were increasingly deadly, with the use of shape-charged weapons, such as the single-use Panzer III, as this unlucky Daimler armoured car demonstrates.
What's happening?
Whilst the planning for Operation Overlord had been meticulous for the landing, for US armour moving inland, the scale of this new terrain was completely unexpected, and they were unprepared for the hell of this hedgerow country. But as was usually the case, the solution came from the guys on the front line, with the introduction of a simple and effective invention, what would become known as the Cullen device. Devised and constructed in the field by Sergeant Cullen of the United States Army, the Cullen device featured a pair of steel prongs, which, when welded to the front of a tank, could be used to dig in and lift the hedges so that tanks could create their own gaps through which to pass and avoid the German anti-tank guns, Panzerfaust and mines.
Are we going to demonstrate it? No.
Yeah, it's got a bit of hedge. Very cool.
I don't think the Normandy attack was this slow.
The device is not working. Yeah, actually. guys, this is people.
The Bocage country reinforced the need for close cooperation and mutual support between armour and infantry to nullify the advantages that the terrain provided for the defending German forces. The infantry becoming the eyes and ears, with the tanks offering instant firepower.
See, now they're trying to put out the fire. Everyone's running in wet with buckets of sand. There's no German, there's no enemy.
By the way, all the book just income sparks and the rest.
That's what science is.
Go before everyone starts going.
Friends all tried to warn me, but I held my ear wide. All the time they warned me, but I only passed by. They all tried to tell me, but I can't sign me again. To walk with the devil instead of all the burning wages that have fallen after me. All the beams and the burning memories. Everyone left behind each time I close the door. Burning bridges lost forever.
By the 18th of July, following a series of offences against the bulk of the German forces in the west, British forces were finally able to capture the city of Caen, a long-held D-Day objective. It had taken 6 weeks of hard fighting, but now the Allies could think about moving on from a war of attrition to one of movement. However, to achieve this, they first had to crack the German defences. The long-awaited breakout was about to begin. On the 25th of July, following a massive aerial bombardment by 3,000 aircraft, the Americans launched Operation Cobra. The breakout was on. It was here, on the American southern flank, that the Allies had a numerical advantage in both men and armour over the Germans, and whilst the British and Commonwealth forces pinned the Germans to the north, it was the American sector that the breakout would be first achieved. Operation Cobra was essentially over in 3 days. The opportunity was now available for the Allies to encircle as many of the remaining German forces as possible at Falaise and push on and liberate France and the Low Countries. The battle for Normandy was over. Gentlemen, that brings the battle to a close. Thank you for watching the arena today and for coming to Tankfest, which we hope you have found to have been a fun and informative experience. Ladies and gentlemen, as we always do, we would ask you now all to stand and pause for a minute's silence as we remember all those who did this for real, who serve us now, and who may have to defend our liberties again in the future.